In a wide-ranging conversation, Matt Walsh discusses the internal conflicts within the American right wing, the challenges of loyalty and principles amidst factional disputes, the ideological battles defining conservatism, and broader cultural and societal issues affecting Western civilization. The dialogue touches on the tragic vacuum left after the loss of prominent conservative leader Charlie Kirk, the complexities of political alignment, and the deep fractures threatening unity on the right. Walsh also reflects on moral relativism, the sanctity of human life, violence and justice, and the erosion of traditional values in America and beyond. Matt Walsh begins by addressing what he terms a near civil war within the Trump-aligned conservative coalition. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, regarded as the glue holding together various factions on the right, created a significant leadership vacuum. Kirk's loss was not only a personal tragedy, but also a strategic blow to the movement. Far from galvanizing unified followers into a renewed conservative force, his death left the coalition fractured into numerous competing factions, each demanding public denouncements of rivals, threatening divisiveness. Walsh explains that loyalty, especially in male camaraderie terms, is foundational and non-negotiable for him. He refuses to condemn friends publicly, even amid intense social media pressures, because betrayal is, in his view, a profound moral failure. Walsh emphasizes that loyalty is a core principle tied intricately to personal integrity and spine, particularly for men. He rejects the idea of disavowing friends under social or political pressure, arguing that loyalty demands steadfast support, regardless of disagreements. Betrayal is a concept universally reviled, transcending eras and cultures, citing historical examples like Judas and Quisling as worse than open enemies. He clarifies that disagreement is natural and healthy in friendships, but repudiation and public condemnation cross into betrayal. Walsh's loyalty extends even in extreme hypothetical scenarios, such as if a close relative committed heinous crimes. He might privately oppose their actions, but never publicly denounce them. This principle stands in contrast to the current political atmosphere, where public shaming and cancel culture dominate. The conversation pivots to a philosophical critique of leftism as the ideological enemy. Walsh defines modern leftism primarily by its embrace of moral relativism, the denial of absolute truth. He asserts this worldview undermines the foundations of Western civilization by rejecting objective reality, including biological truths about sex and inherent human dignity. From this perspective, leftism seeks to dismantle key social institutions like the family and marriage and devalues human life, especially seen in its stance on abortion, euthanasia, and gender ideology. Walsh highlights the moral catastrophe of abortion in America, underscoring the daily killing of hundreds of thousands of unborn children, whose worth is regarded as contingent rather than inherent, a stark contrast to Western and Christian heritage. Despite internal disagreements about economics and policy specifics, Walsh suggests conservatives should unite around preserving objective truth, the family, marriage, American identity, and Western civilization. He notes that on economic issues like welfare and taxation, conservatives can hold widely divergent views while still sharing the same foundational goals. However, ideological coherence fractures when some within the right begin endorsing or defending mass violence or reject core values. Walsh calls out the troubling trend of some supporters excusing or ignoring civilian deaths in conflicts such as Gaza, labeling such attitudes as leftist because they reject universal moral standards and individual worth. Walsh and the host explore the thorny ethical questions around war, collateral damage, and historical precedents like the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. While condemning wanton killing of innocents, both acknowledge the tragic realities of warfare where innocent lives are lost. Walsh reflects on the difficulty in adjudicating when such actions are justified or represent moral failures, highlighting the principle of double effect, where harm may be unintended but tolerated to achieve a greater good. The discussion acknowledges that some conservatives defending Israel's actions may do so from a genuine belief in self-defense and minimizing casualties. Yet there remains a morally troubling acceptance of large-scale suffering. A significant theme relates to the role of the state in maintaining justice and whether citizens may justifiably resort to violence when the state fails to act. Walsh underscores that justice means giving people what they are owed, including rightful punishment for crimes. He observes growing frustration as communities perceive law enforcement and governments as unable or unwilling to protect them from violent offenders, citing examples of vigilante intervention like Daniel Penny's subway defense as morally justified even when punished by the legal system. This underscores a societal tipping point where the erosion of state authority risks fueling chaos and individual action motivated by survival and justice. The discussion expands to broader societal declines evident in everyday life, from deteriorating food quality at chain restaurants to infrastructure failures and demographic shifts. Walsh describes how privatization, economic dysfunction, and changing workforce demographics contribute to worsening quality of life for many Americans, particularly in middle-income and rural areas. There is also a palpable unease about rapid demographic changes and the decline of historically white populations in the U.S. and other Western countries, framed as intentional and unprecedented. Walsh advocates reclaiming the term Native American to reflect the European-descended founders of the United States, critiquing the erasure of white identity and expressing alarm over anti-white sentiment and demographic replacement policies. Walsh situates the conflicts over race, identity, and ideology within a larger existential struggle over the fate of Western civilization. He links the focus on identity politics, cultural decay, and political strife to a rejection of Christian and classical foundations, emphasizing individuality, God-given dignity, objective truth, and stable social institutions. Attacks on the family, sanctity of life, and national identity are portrayed as existential and deliberate threats. He joins the consensus that a cultural realignment is occurring, with many self-identified conservatives drifting from traditional conservative values toward positions that undermine those very foundations. A persistent moral concern revolves around the role of the medical establishment in advancing what Walsh terms evil practices, including abortion, euthanasia, and gender transition treatments for minors. He decries the normalization and medical institutionalization of practices like castrating children, mutilating bodies, and advocating death as medical treatment. Walsh critiques how these trends are often shielded from public scrutiny by medical consensus and social conformity, allowing widespread harm under the guise of personal choice or compassion. He draws parallels to historical atrocities such as Nazi euthanasia programs, warning that slippery slopes from care to killing are real and devastating. Walsh expresses disdain for much of the political class, characterizing many politicians as either power-hungry opportunists or attention seekers rather than true ideological actors. He observes that these politicians often do not care about conservative institutions or values, but pursue power detached from coherent convictions. This contributes to frustration among conservatives who feel misrepresented and disillusioned by the system, exacerbating divisions and cynicism within the right. The conversation turns to the personal toll of being a public conservative voice amid hostile social media dynamics. Walsh describes constant attacks on his character and motives, often from people he once considered friends, and his struggle to maintain loyalty and composure. He reflects on the addictive and demoralizing aspects of engagement on platforms like Twitter/X, which can trap users in negativity, outrage, and a broken conversational cycle. Walsh advocates cultivating disciplined, structured spiritual practices like prayer to withstand these pressures and maintain perspective. Walsh emphasizes that prayer and faith are vital supports in navigating the emotional and spiritual challenges of public life and ideological battles. He candidly describes the natural cycles of spiritual dryness and frustration, encouraging intentional routines and physical postures like kneeling to reconnect with God's presence and submit to a higher authority. For Walsh, the sense of being connected to something greater than oneself is a crucial counterbalance to the chaos and hostility experienced in political discourse. Finally, Walsh highlights that much of current political division stems from confusion about foundational beliefs. He urges individuals to clarify what they want to conserve: objective truth, belief in God, the family, marriage, American national identity, and Western civilization. Those who share these goals form a broad coalition that transcends old labels of left and right, while those who reject these core values stand fundamentally opposed. Walsh hints that a larger than perceived group exists that aligns with these conservative roots, including some outside traditional right-wing circles, signaling potential for new alliances rooted in shared principles rather than partisan loyalty. Walsh acknowledges the mixed blessing of modern social media and independent commentary, which have disrupted traditional media's control over discourse and unearthed unexpected voices and ideas. While this democratization enables fresh perspectives, it also floods the conversation with noise, requiring discernment and self-control. Walsh encourages steering clear of the compulsive habit of immediately checking social media upon waking, advocating for more intentional, grounded starts to the day to preserve mental and spiritual health amidst the relentless pace of online discourse.